It's Wednesday. This is where we do the free Powernomics training every Wednesday night in the Black Business School. And the reason that Powernomics training is so important is because we know that money is power, and we know that we want to go get some. We want to have power so that others do not use their power over us. And also, for the last several years, we've been reading through every single one of Dr. Claude Anderson's books because he's the GOAT in terms of individuals that have made tremendous contributions to our society and helped us to just learn the things we need to learn and be who we need to be. And so tonight we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to read in one of his books. His book is called The Black History Reader, and I'll let you guys know what page we're on in 1 second. And also, another thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit of a current event that I just saw that I thought would be worth analyzing, exploring, and breaking down. Because you know what I do? I do the Dr. Boyce Breakdown. In fact, I have a podcast on Spotify called the Dr. Boyce Breakdown, and literally there's stuff up there every single day. So if you have Spotify on your phone, and you support independent Black media, we would love to have your back. We would love to have you subscribe. And so feel free to look me up on Spotify, look up the Dr. Boyce Breakdown, or in the other podcast I have called Dr. Boyce Daily Stock Market. All right, so let me see who's in here. I want to say hi to some of y'all before we jump right into it. Hey, Lori Eubanks, I see you, Lori. Good to see you today. Thank you so much for coming in. Let's see. I see. I saw Karen. Oh, Kendall and Karen from New York. Good to see you. All right, I love this Bed-Stuy. Rodney Ward, San Francisco. Let's see. Landetz T. Jones. Is that right? I probably said it wrong. But good to see you. Sacramento in the house. I love Black Sacramento. I did an event in Sacramento about 7 years ago, and I never forgot how amazing that city was and just how awesome the Black folks were in Sacramento. DMV I see Rev Joe. That's all I see of your name. I don't see the rest there. Akila Hooker. Good to see you, Akila. Taquana Logan from East Rancho Dominguez, California. Did I see East Atlanta for Kwame? Okay, good to see everybody in here. And I saw Black London in the house. Good to see everybody. Okay, so yeah, so here is the first thing that I wanted to kind of discuss and sort of address. Did anybody else hear about this? Did anybody else hear that BET is on the chopping block in terms of being sold by their parent massa, Paramount? Because BET is not a Black-owned company. We know this, right? BET it's not Black entertainment television. It's white entertainment television in blackface. That's what that is. It's not a Black company. It's a white company that has Black people in it, that uses Black culture and sells Black culture to you pretty much, and gets corporate sponsors to give them money because they go to the corporations. They say, we have, like Trump said, we have all the Black people. We have all the Black people, and we will gather all the Black people to come and watch Sexy Red twerking on the stage. Get it sexy, get it sexy. And when we get all the Black people, they love to buy things. They buy everything. So you advertise to us, you pay us money, pay us billions of dollars, and we will go gather the Black people, and then we're all gonna get rich together. And that's kind of what BET is. And BET, in case you don't know, is owned by a company called Paramount Global. And for many years, Paramount Global was run by a family called the Redstone family. The patriarch of that family was a weirdo named Sumner Redstone. He was a funny guy. I don't know if I think he's dead. He might, but maybe he's alive. I don't want to kill him too quick. But I think he was like 92 and had like a 35-year-old girlfriend or something. So he was probably doing some old Diddy Hugh Hefner type stuff. And anyway, so the Redstone family, apparently they have run Paramount into the ground. BET, if you work for BET, you better be worried because your economic daddy is having some problems. If you study Paramount Global, you'll see that Paramount Global has a big problem, and their problems can be summarized very quickly in terms of too much debt. They got about $15 billion in debt that they can't really service. They overpay for their content. They put out way too much money for content. Now they don't overpay for BET content. That they overpay for other content. Not but the BET content they get the discount. And I don't. Yeah, they're not going. Sexy Red probably costs you like $8 in a bag of Cheetos to get her to twerk on stage while she's pregnant or something. So that's cheap. That's there. So BET is as Black people always have been, BET is the golden asset of Paramount. It is really a nice little business where they're like, hey, we can go, we can go buy these Negroes for $1.99 and we can then sell them to advertisers and make our money just like we did in slavery. So it's something to rest on dot in 2020. Thank you, Janet. I did not know that he was dead. I could not remember. I don't know the family that well. I know the basics. I know the basics. So let me kind of read to you about the sale of BET and what I've sort of seen, and then kind of give you a Dr. Boyce perspective on this. And just so you know, I'm coming. You know what I am. I'm probably gonna sound like a hater because I am. I kind of am. I hate anybody who hates us. I just well I don't hate, you know what I mean? But I don't when you hate us that much that you just want our children dead, you want our kids in prison, you want our people as ignorant as possible. You want more broken families. You want to celebrate all the things that harm us. You want to celebrate Black people dying young from diabetes and fried chicken. You want to celebrate mental illness. You want to celebrate busted, broken relationships. You want to celebrate economic despair. You want to celebrate poverty. You want to celebrate the lack of education. That's gonna make me a hater. I'm gonna sound like a hater. So I have to be honest with you. I'm really not particularly interested in having a lot of patience with anybody who's probably doing more damage to the Black community than the KKK ever could. There is no Klansman. There is no Trump supporter. There's no Democrat or Republican that could ever do as much damage to the Black community as BET is probably doing when they celebrate some of the stuff that they celebrate. In fact, if you recall, BET was the network that that really, really, really elevated R. Kelly right after he got caught on video with that little girl. If you go back and you look back maybe about 2003, 2002, 2004, something like that, this was way before I was doing any of this. This is way before any of you knew who I was because I was just on the faculty at Syracuse University. No one knew who I was. Nobody cared. I remember I called my wife, Alicia, who's now my wife. She was my friend back then. And I remember calling her and I said, how in the hell are they putting this Negro on TV? And making him the keynote performer. They didn't just it was right after. If you recall, go look at the history. It was right after this man, was on this tape with this little girl. I don't know if that was the time he peed on the girl or not. I get them mixed up. There's so many pee stories about R. Kelly. And if you remember, the only network that really stood by him was BET. BET brought him on for an interview after the incident, and that was where he was given an opportunity to do some damage control. And he kept saying, "Just focus on my music, just focus on my music," because that's the goal, right? If we get you to focus on how good my music is, then you're going to forget about all these other things that are going on. And then for the BET Awards, I will never forget. I said, I wonder if they're going to have him perform on the BET Awards because a lot of radio stations had banned his music at the time. Not only did they have him perform on the BET Awards, they gave him the longest set. They like everybody else's performance might have been 3 or 4 minutes. His had to be like 12 or 13 minutes, maybe 15. It was really long and it was a full-fledged music video, all that stuff. Maybe it was 03, 04-ish around that time. And I just remember thinking, Lord Jesus, is that all? So y'all really that's all y'all really care about is the money, huh? And so this is the history. And I'm sorry, I don't think you can be nice about it. What BET kind of does is I understand what they're seeking to do. They try to balance the crazy and the negative with a little bit of positive to try to say, well, no, we got this and we got that, and I love that. They have Infinity Song who performed at the All Black National Convention several times. They were at the BET Awards this year. I think D1's been invited, stuff like that. So I think that their goal is to say, look, we got a range. But I think I was talking to my wife about it the other day, and I said, okay, so if I gave you 30 gallons of Kool-Aid and it was like the best Kool-Aid you've ever had, but I tell you, oh, by the way, there's about 2 ounces of piss in the Kool-Aid. Like I just put a little drop of urine in the Kool, just a little pee, just a little. It's not a lot. You won't taste it. You won't taste the pee in the Kool-Aid, but because there's 30 gallons of Kool-Aid and just one drop of pee. Is that okay? Like, would y'all drink the Kool-Aid? How many of y'all, yes or no? Would you want to drink the Kool-Aid if it had even just one little drop of pee in it? But it was like the best Kool-Aid you ever had, but it's just one drop, just a little drop of pee in there. What do you think? I don't know. What do y'all think? And I think that's kind of what the point, the argument would be is that, if you think about it, if someone was to make the argument and say, well, no, 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 look at all the good things BET does, that outweighs the bad things. I think that's an interesting conversation, because then you can make that same argument about R. Kelly or Bill Cosby, or really anybody, any person or entity that's done terrible things. You could say, well, even if you like, if you dislike Donald Trump, for example, or if you look at Joe Biden and know that he incarcerated more black men than any president in American history, or you look at Donald Trump and what he wanted to do to the Central Park Five, you can make the exact same argument. You could say, no, 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 but look at all the good things. Look at all the good stuff he did. It's okay. It's all that's forgiven because he did this good stuff. And I think that's not an argument. That's not a debate for me to have for you. That's a debate I want you to have for yourself. And I think all of us have to kind of balance that out and figure that out. Like, what does this look like? So BET is very dangerous, to be honest with you. And I know I upset people over there, and I'd hate to be the guy who's saying these things. But I think that they know these things. They know these things, and the reason I know is because I had a conversation with a guy named T.J. Holmes, and back when he worked with BET, and I remember he called me. Somehow Don Lemon gave him my number, and he called me on my phone, and we talked. And I think he was surprised that I understood their business model so well. He said I was in a meeting, and he said I could have. It was almost like you wrote that article as if you were in the meeting with us. I couldn't believe that you wrote, and I said, yeah, well, because I understand how racism works. I understand how powerful media is. I understand what capitalism does. I understand when you mix money and media, that can be a formula for oppression. When you mix money and media, so y'all got to understand this. This is an economic lesson. I'm about to dive into this article in a minute. But um, when you have the money, which white people have much more than you. So if you measure your success based on how much money you have, then you're automatically going to be a white supremacist. And the reason is because white people have most of the money. That's like a fish measuring its the quality of the fish by how fast it runs the 100-meter dash. A fish will always be inferior to a panther, because panthers run fast, and fish do not. Fish, they swim. So what the fish would have to do in order to create a level playing field is stop trying to be a track star. Stop trying to be something that you're not. Stop trying to give your opponent the advantage by competing with their rules and their standards. Do you understand? So stop measuring success, your success, my success, black success, by how much money you have or how famous you are, how much you're on TV. Because that's something, if you want to talk about this whole oppression, white supremacy thing, well, they own the TV networks. They own the radio stations. They have the capital bases. They own the banks that fund these institutions. So how the hell are you going to compete with that? How are you can't do that. The only way you can really win is you have to change the rules. You have to throw out the whole competition altogether and create something that gives you an advantage. So ultimately, when you mix money, and we love money. It's really fascinating to me. In case you knew, my background is I'm a finance guy, and I've been teaching finance for a long time. When you really consider how much we love money and how much we worship people just because they made money or just because they're on TV, um, it's really fascinating to me, because we don't have that much money to begin with. So you can't measure black success based on who has the most money or who's the most famous. Give me a guess if you understand that. We have to pick other criteria. What are those criteria? I'm going to allow you to decide what that's going to be, but it has to be something other than that. So with BET, it's the perfect formula for oppression. And I'm going to read this article to you and tell you what's going on with BET. Another real surprise with this pending purchase of BET is that they cut the price in half. And the price, when Byron Allen made a bid for BET, he bid $3.5 billion. Now they're in talks to sell it for 1.7 billion, according to Variety. Now here's what Variety's saying. Now that was a real shocker to me. I'm like, why? So maybe BET's struggling. I don't know. I mean, this is very surprising when the price gets cut that much. So they said here in this article in Variety, it says BET or Paramount is reportedly in talks to sell BET for 1.6 billion in a buyout led by CEO Scott Mills. I don't know Scott Mills. I guess he's the CEO of BET. He seems like a nice guy. I don't know. He's a bald. He's got a bald head like me, but he's got kind of a little George Jefferson thing going on. But he seems like a nice dude. I don't know this man. It says Paramount Global's trio of co-CEOs have publicly said they've hired bankers to evaluate the sale of certain assets. Industry speculation has swirled around BET, which has been the target of acquisition offers in the past. Now, Paramount Global is engaged in exclusive discussions to sell BET in a deal valued at 1.6 to 1.7 billion to quote buyers that include end quote BET CEO Scott Mills and Chen Chu, founder of private equity firm CC Capital, Bloomberg reported, citing anonymous sources. The BET Media Group comprises the BET cable channel, VH1, and other networks, the BET Plus streaming service, and BET Studios. Reps for Paramount Global and CC Capital declined to comment. Shares of Paramount Global rose on the report of the renewed sales talks, closing up 5.7% for the day to $10.72. Interesting, right? The latest reported price range for BET is less than half of the 3.5 billion that media mogul Byron Allen extended to Paramount Global in late 2023. So let's think about this for a minute. Let's be conscious of time for a moment. What month is this and what year? This is July 2024. And just late 2023, you had a bid that was twice as high as what you're selling the company for now. What's happening? That just doesn't add up. It seems to me that Byron Allen was offering you 3.5 billion 7 or 8 months ago. You would have taken the bid. Now, the only possibility I'm thinking about is perhaps they didn't believe that it was credible. Remember, anybody can bid anything for anything. Anybody can pop up and say, "Oh, I'll give you $10 billion for your house or something." But they have to be able to raise the money. And so I think that with Byron, I think the question might have been, can he really go get the money? Or is he just making big bids, hoping he can go raise the money? Is he just doing it for attention? Nobody knows. And I know that with Byron Allen, it seemed to me that the Griot was having some trouble. I know he bought the Griot. I think that they were overspending on their content. I got that sense because I know he had to let a lot of people go. He had to fire a lot of people. The media business is a tough business. So some other bidders were were Tyler Perry and Sean Diddy Combs. Can you imagine if they sold BET to Diddy? Wouldn't that be something else? In August 2023, Paramount called off the bidding process for BET because, quote, a sale wouldn't result in any meaningful deleveraging of its balance sheet. I'm confused. It's just 8 months later. So now it wouldn't. So 3.5 billion wouldn't result in you paying off enough debt, but 1.7 billion will. So I think that what's happened is that Paramount's in even deeper, much deeper trouble than it was at the end of 2023. But I can tell you, as a person who's been following Paramount stock for a long time, that company's been in trouble for a while. So I'm very surprised that they're even talking about this. Let's see here. The three executives running Paramount Global have outlined a three-pronged strategy of job cuts, asset sales, and streaming partnerships to right the ship. The company's going solo for now after controlling shareholder Sherry Redstone, who's the daughter of Sumner Redstone, nixed M&A talks with Skydance Media as those came down to the wire. The leadership trio, George Cheeks, president and CEO of CBS, Chris McCarthy, president and CEO of Showtime, MTV Entertainment Studios and Paramount Media Networks, and Brian Robbins, president and CEO of Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon, were installed as co-CEOs after Bob Bakish's dismissal. Okay. Another prime asset Paramount Global is expected to shop around is the Paramount Pictures Studio. So basically, okay, here we go. Let me move on to, they talk about Chris Mills, the guy that I mentioned. I think his name was Chris Mills, the CEO of BET. I hope I got Scott Mills. I'm sorry, Scott Mills. Let's see. They said here, speaking at the June 25th employee town hall, CBS's Cheek said the Paramount's co-CEOs are looking to sell certain Paramount-owned assets. In fact, we've already hired bankers to assist us in this process, blah, blah, blah. Scott Mills has led BET since January 2018, adding CEO to his title in 2021. He first joined BET in 1997 as a senior VP of business development and rose through the ranks over the years to various senior roles. As COO of BET, he led the launch of his Centric channel, and as president of digital media, launched BET Mobile and BET's digital video distribution operations. Okay. So there's more. You can go look up more if you want to. But basically, BET is owned and run by Paramount, as we mentioned earlier, and basically Paramount has too much debt. The traditional media that they built their business on, Sumner Redstone is really good with traditional media and traditional cable. All that stuff's kind of dying. It's kind of going away. And so they're losing money in a pretty horrible way. And they're just overspending on their content. They had this show that I liked called Yellowstone, and they had this writer named Taylor Sheridan who wrote the show. And I guess because his shows were so good, they gave him like the ability, kind of a blank check to just create a bunch of other shows that are on the network. I forgot the name of it. I think one of them stars Sylvester Stallone's like Tulsa King or something, and a couple more. But anyway, the funny thing was that they were, and this is something for you to remember when you go build your own business, is that if you recall, remember the other day, how many of you were in financial consciousness training in the last couple of days where I talked about the free cash flow problem? Does is anybody remember when we talked about the free cash flow problem and what happens when companies or even individuals just have too much access to cash? Well, what happens is you become less efficient, you become less financially conscious, you start to just make it rain, you start throwing around, you start becoming a rapper in the strip club, dropping $100 bills in stripper thongs, right? So basically, Taylor Sheridan, there was a deep Wall Street Journal analysis of Taylor Sheridan and the toxic financial relationship between Paramount and Taylor Sheridan, where basically they said that because Paramount Global had given this guy free range to do whatever the hell he wanted, he was creating amazing content, but he wasn't profitable anymore. This man was going around talking to other farmers, from what I understand. At least that's what the report insinuated. He was literally talking to his homeboys and saying, look, these people are suckers. These Hollywood suckers, they got all this money. You can rent your horses for $2,000 a day. You can rent, you can use I use my property and they pay me $50,000 a day to use my land. He would fly in horse trainers from other states. When he would be in a state with plenty of horse trainers, but he would feel the need to fly his horse trainers in from Texas or whatever. So basically, they didn't sort of consider the fact that yes, you do have a hit. Yeah, you are making money, but you have to remember the most important rule of financial success. It is to live within your means. It is to spend less than what you make. If you, I don't care if you make $1 trillion a year, if you spend more than you make, you're only digging yourself into a deeper and deeper financial hole. And so what happened with Paramount Global as a result, and this just gives you the backdrop. And I'm talking about this because BET is part of the community, and y'all people be out here thinking that it's a black owned company and it's not. Um but so the thing about Paramount that was interesting. So what happened was Taylor Sheridan, his shows were so good that they got a million new subscribers with Paramount. That's really good. They got a million new subscribers in a quarter. But that same quarter, I think they lost either $1 or $2 billion. They had $1 billion loss. While like literally the greatest period of growth in your company is a massive loss. And so keep that in mind. Be efficient with your money. Be efficient with your income. Conservatism is a culture. And I can tell you that if you don't embrace that, then you could have some financial challenges. And this goes for an individual, this goes for a company, or in everything in between. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I think that's a lesson to learn. I'll keep you posted on what happens with BET and who their new massa is, and maybe maybe Scott Mills will buy it, and then I guess it'll kind of be a black owned company. But the other things I'd always be interested in who's really funding this, right? Because I'm a believer that it's not the manager who makes the difference because he's been managing BET for a long time. He's been the economic babysitter of this entity for a very long time. The real power is the person who's actually writing the checks. That's the person who or the group who has the veto power. And the big problem you have with black media right now. Here's the problem that you have, and this is something I want to talk about before we dig into the book. Unhealthy black people are very profitable. Vices and addictions are extremely profitable. Vices and addictions and unhealthy behavior are much more profitable than people living with intelligence, consciousness, and discipline. And what do I mean by that? It's much easier to sell black people fried chicken than it is to sell them health food. You actually have to care about them to get them to buy health food because you're not going to make as much money. So if money is your only criteria, then you don't sell people things that are going to help them. You sell them their vice. You sell them the things that they want, not the things that they need. And that's the biggest problem that you have with BET is that there is a part of the culture that has become quite accustomed to all of the cultural poisons that kill our young people at an early age. There's a part of the culture that really embraces the drugs because drugs are fun. I don't use drugs. I never popped a Molly before, but I bet I would like it. I ain't never hit the crack pipe. But if you say, well, how do you know crack is bad if you never tried it? Well, no, I know that if I tried, I would probably enjoy it. In fact, if I was to try it, I wouldn't be the man that I am right now. I'd be on here justifying crack use because I wouldn't want to give up that high. The reality is that when you talk about the problems that we have, we're very comfortable in the dysfunction. We're starting to celebrate the dysfunction. We celebrate it because what they do is they sprinkle money on top of it and they sprinkle fame on top of it. So you look at a young lady like a Krishan Rock. I don't know if you ever know if you anybody how many of y'all I keep up with all the culture. Me and my wife do. I don't know. Some of y'all I know don't keep up, but you need to look up Krishan Rock and Blueface. How many of y'all are familiar with Krishan Rock and Blueface? Anybody else? Because I watch the culture because I like to see because in my book, The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk about economics, but all I talk about is culture. What does a strong economic culture look like? And we don't have one, people. We just don't. We have a long way to go. Well, Krishan Rock and Blueface, to summarize it, they're kind of like the new version of it's imagine Bobby and Whitney at 25 years old, but also imagine that neither one of them have any talent. Like Bobby and Whitney could sing. Bobby could dance and jump around and sing and wiggle and all that. And Whitney had the most beautiful voice ever. She actually had to earn her way to fame. Krishan Rock and Blueface don't really have any talent like that. They're not that great. They're okay. I think Blueface made a song or two, but they're not that good. But they're similar to Bobby Whitney. They're just this train wreck in slow motion. Like you're watching these two young people literally kill themselves in public. And the reason it ends up seeming okay is because they've got lots of money and lots of fame, and they've got millions of Twitter followers and Instagram followers that will watch them destroy each other's lives. And Krishan had a baby that my wife is a therapist who can identify things like fetal alcohol syndrome by looking at the face of a child. And she was deeply concerned with Krishan's child because she knows that Krishan loves to party it up. They were at the BET Awards twerking and, pregnant women twerking and holding liquor bottles. And one of the things, for example, this is one of many things we could talk about, but I'm not going to go into all of it because I don't want to depress anybody. But do you understand that when you're promoting the city girl culture of all these young black women that are being told to go out and twerk and drink liquor all day and have sex with just anybody, fetal alcohol syndrome is literally one of the quiet epidemics that's occurring in the black community. If you look at the symptoms and the effects of fetal alcohol syndrome, you're talking about significant cognitive delays and significant behavioral problems of millions and millions of black children. I was shocked by how little alcohol the mother had to consume during her pregnancy for fetal alcohol syndrome to kick in. So think about this. You live in city girl life because you've been watching the BET Awards and Krishan Rock and Megan Thee Stallion told you that's how a young girl's supposed to live. You've been having sex. In case you don't know, sex results in pregnancy, and that means children are going to be born. For those who need a biology lesson, sometimes we forget. And so you're pregnant for maybe 4 weeks, but you don't know you're pregnant. So every week you're getting drunk and getting high every single week. Well, that is where the fetal alcohol syndrome comes from. And what many people, what nobody has talked about, I have not seen anybody on the internet address this at all, is that millions of young children, young black children, are getting fetal alcohol syndrome because you don't have to drink that much for that to really disrupt the brain of your child. I'm talking about significant neurological problems, like they're slow for the rest of their life and have behavioral problems for the rest of their life. So this is one of the many things that I think has to be addressed, right? Somebody has to talk about it. And when people talk about these things, you can't just say, well, you be hating. That can't be your response. Man, that's not hate, that's love. Now, the real hater are the people who celebrate this kind of stuff, who know what it leads to, who see the millions of black kids going to prison and getting killed and all this other stuff and think that that's okay. And so part of my job, in my opinion, is as a person who talks to you about money, is I need you to really understand money from a 360 standpoint, which means that money is good, it's nice, but it can destroy you or distract you and mislead you. Money can get you to heaven, but money can also be the devil. Money can be the devil shows up with a bag full of money. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but BET has become kind of the devil of the black community. Everything that is harmful and destructive and terrible about being black tends to get celebrated in these spaces, and they dress it up with money and fame, and we think that that makes it okay. But even before people realized that Diddy was a predator, there were people who always said that, but there were many people who would have argued you down because they would have said, no, 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 Diddy's one of the leaders of the black community. I mean, process this. Think about this for a moment. One of the biggest predators that in the media right now is a guy who 4 years ago was telling you who to vote for. Anybody remember Vote or Die? He was telling you you got to vote or you're going to be dead or something stupid like that, right? And people were doing this. Millions of people were following the lead of a person who has a complete track record of 30 years of doing horrible, harmful things to people, possibly including starting with killing Tupac. Right. So I think generally, and this is where we're going to dig into. We're going to read tonight about Black leadership and the history of Black leadership, so you can understand that sometimes you're following the wrong leaders. That's my point. In fact, it's so dangerous to follow a Black leader nowadays, in my opinion, that I don't really want you following any leader. I don't even want you follow. I don't want you following me. I'm just an advisor. I'm a person who's got a perspective. If you'll hear my perspective, then that's all I ask you to do. I'm not asking you to follow me, because generally speaking, it is difficult for Black people on a mass scale to distribute a message that is going to be beneficial to all Black families. Most of the messages that are healthy are not going to make as much money as the unhealthy messages that are going to point you to more ignorance, drug abuse, and ratchetism. That's what makes the money. This Black intelligence stuff is not a big money maker. Okay. All right. So let me jump into the book. We're going to read tonight from Dr. Claude Anderson's book, The Black History Reader. We're going to go to page 158. Now, Dr. Claude Anderson, his books, I always have to mention his website. It's powernomics.com. So you can go to powernomics.com. Get all of his books. These are the must-read books for every Black person in America that wants to do better. He's the modern-day Marcus Garvey. He's one of the greatest Black thinkers in the country, which is one of the reasons why he's seen as dangerous even by many HBCUs, because their bills are being paid by people who don't want to see the Black community gain too much power and influence. But if you read his book, Powernomics, it will transform you immediately. And I'm not here to say every entertainer is bad. I can tell you, Kanye West saw Powernomics. He immediately was affected by it. Ice Cube saw Powernomics, immediately influenced by it. Charlemagne the God, Tiffany Haddish, people like that. A lot of celebrities, even Diddy flew Dr. Anderson into his office because he has so much respect for Powernomics. So some of this, so what's going on, in my opinion, is that there are people who know that something's wrong. They just can't put their finger on it. Like they're just not sure. They're like, okay, something ain't right here. It's like you're playing a game and somehow the other team keeps winning. Somehow Massa always, he ends up with all the money, all the power, and all the positive outcomes belong to him. And you always end up in last place. And you can't figure out. And every time you say, wait, this game seems rigged, he has you brainwashed. He's been educating you and grooming you, right? So he can exploit you, right? He just like a groomer would groom. He's been grooming you through the educational system to buy into a set of ideas where all of the disparities can be explained away. And so you walk away concluding a bunch of nonsense, like, oh, well, the reason that white people have all the money is because white people just work harder than Black people. And the way to fix those problems is we all got to go vote for our favorite white man, either the old arrogant narcissist or the old guy who can't remember his kids' names right now. Like, that's the guy. That's what we do, and that's going to get us where we need to get to. And so to some extent, the reason that Dr. Anderson is dangerous is because he's encouraging you to wake up. And really, I will tell you, my position is very simple. I'm not really telling you to do what I tell you to do. I'm not telling you to do what I believe you should do. I'm telling you to do what's going to be best for you. And I want you to study that. I want you to figure this out. And again, it goes back to very simple things: health, wealth, and relationships. What does it mean for Black people to be physically and mentally healthy? There wasn't much on the BET Awards that led to physical or mental health. None of that. There's nothing about a pregnant woman twerking and holding a liquor bottle that says anything about a young lady having a positive, wonderful life. It speaks that she's going to be abused, assaulted. She's going to be depressed, and fatherless for her children. Her children are going to be unhappy. There's going to be a lot of poverty. There's going to be a lot of despair. What's healthy about that? What's physically and mentally healthy about any of that? The second area is relationships. We need families. We lost our families. Who's getting our families back? What is it when you watch the BET Awards? What about the BET Awards on any level, in my view, is pro-family? There's nothing. I mean, if you're highlighting the sexy reddish, type stuff, there's nothing about that that's pro-family. Nothing. There's nothing about that that speaks of responsible planning of when you have a child and who you have a child with. All that's promoted typically is very irresponsible, very sloppy sex. I'm going to go sleep with whoever I want. STDs are very, very high because a lot of people fall into this culture. And also, broken families are very high. A lot of people don't even have the training of what's required to even have a healthy relationship with another human being that is necessary to provide a protective space for a child. So when a child is not protected by a father, that increases the probability that he ends up getting molested, or that he ends up in the street, or that something bad happens to him, or ends up in prison. And then you go down the third area. What does it mean for black wealth to actually go up? There's nothing that I've seen rappers really do that's improved or increased black wealth in the black community at all. Nothing. And then when you turn to the politicians, all they do is they offer you jobs working for white people. So those are the two options you get. You either get a rapper who brags about how much money he has, but ain't putting nothing in your pocket, or you get a politician who says, "Here, come work for me, Negro. I'll give you a job. I'll help you in your desperate situation." Well, who's giving you the long-term plan that's going to really allow you to have the peace of financial security? Who's really giving you the solutions that are going to allow you to actually prosper instead of just survive? Who's doing that? There's nothing in mainstream media, or very little in mainstream media, that I see that is really sort of doing these things that's really going to get the black community where we need to be. Not only are we being given the wrong medicine, we're being given no medicine, and we're given a bunch of poison disguised as medicine. So that's what I believe. That's my 2 cents. All right, so let me start reading here. And by the way, if you're not on the text list to get invited to Powernomics training on Wednesday, just pull out your phone, text the word greatness, GREATNESS, greatness to 87948. Text greatness to 87948. And also, we have my book is The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can get a copy at drboycebooks.com. Use the code word book club and get 30% off everything in the store. So feel free to go to drboycebooks.com and you can check that out. All right. So here's what Dr. Anderson reveals on page 58 of the Black History Reader that it was really fascinating to me. Did you know that black leadership changed their position on immigration around the 1960s? Did you know that they actually had a completely different policy on immigration before the civil rights movement? And basically, whoever was controlling them pretty much got them to pivot and shift in a different direction. I don't know if y'all know this, but let me read this to you. I'm going to tell you, this is what Dr. Anderson says. I literally have not read this yet, so I'll be as surprised as you when I get to whatever he says. So he says here, black leaders and activists unilaterally expressed opposition to the nation's open door policy on immigration throughout the 19th century. These conscious black leaders expressed concern that immigrants were reinforcing the subordination of the native black population, as well as usurping the access of blacks to rights, privileges, employment, education, and wealth building opportunities. The negative impact of immigrants worsened after the Civil War when millions entered the country. After slavery, there was a labor shortage, and one would have logically expected the former slaves. Think about this. You have a labor shortage. You got all these former slaves. You got all these black people, hardworking people that they've been working for free. So you know they're going to make good employees. They've been working for free. So here on page 159 of the Black History Reader, Dr. Anderson is telling you that whatever you learned in school was a bunch of BS. So listen to this. The negative impact of immigrants worsened after the Civil War when millions entered the country. After slavery, there was a labor shortage, and one would have logically expected the former slaves who had been skilled tradesmen, carpenters, blacksmiths, cooks, artisans, and farmers to fill those jobs. But the country recruited and imported European immigrants instead. The pattern was just beginning. For more than a century, black leaders had struggled and challenged the white power structure to close the nation's immigrant doors. So they were asking them to shut the doors. They were like, look, you got your workers here. We got you. We can do this. But they were like, no. Rather than working with you, we're going to go get some people from England. That's what he's saying here. So it says, for more than a century, black leaders had struggled and challenged the white power structure to close the nation's immigrant doors. In his famous 1895 Atlanta Expo speech, Booker T. Washington pleaded with white industrialists, businessmen, and politicians not to look to European immigrants to develop skills and work in their businesses, but to instead look to native blacks. How about that? Washington also pointed out that many already had the skills, attitudes, and experiences to meld into the mainstream society. W.E.B. Du Bois was against immigration and spoke frequently about the downside for blacks of 40 million white immigrants coming into the country, doing the jobs of former slaves and being automatically elevated into an overseen white management class. How many of you have ever heard this before? How many of you have ever heard this anywhere? So maybe their concept in their head was, if you do have black jobs, every job should be a black job. Any job we can do is a black job. A black man can fill that job. So I'm not, again, I believe that you have to own the companies and all that for sure. But you can't, Booker T. Washington, that was a great man. George Washington Carver, W.E.B. All these individuals were people who said, yeah, well, some of us want these black jobs. We don't want to have fathers and mothers that are unemployed. We want to have opportunities to make money and to go to work like everybody else. We're already very hardworking people. So stop bringing in outside recruits to replace us. But now, years later, we support wide open. A lot of us just support wide open doors and don't even know why. Don't even know why. Only reason you support it is because Joe Biden told you to support it. That's it. That's the only reason you support it. You forgot about the mass incarceration and the crime bill and all. You don't even think about it. That's why Shaquana ain't got no daddy. You're not even connecting the dots on that. You're just so quick to just do whatever they tell you to do that you don't even think about it. I'm not mad at you for voting for Democrats and Republicans. I get that. I know lesser of two evils. Okay, I get it. But still, what I have a problem with is that some of us don't even think about it. Some of us don't even come to our own conclusion. We just say, okay, what you want me to do? What you want us to do? And that's my problem. That's my problem, is that you're not even processing the information. You're not even thinking like, well, what's best for me? You've told me what's best for you, but I need to make sure that what's best for you is also best for me. That's the problem that I have. And that was really the whole crux of why I just really got really annoyed when I would get calls, when I was at AOL Black Voices 12 years, 14 years ago, whatever, and I would get calls from the Obama administration. At first, I thought it was kind of cool. It's interesting. It's like, oh, wow, okay, President Obama, I'd love to help. But Lord, when I got on the phone, all they were literally trying to do was get me to do what they told me to do. And I was like, who do you think I am? I'm not fit for slavery. I don't do that. And this happens a lot with Black elite people. I'm gonna be honest. That was the gist of the conversation I had with Kanye West. As we get on the phone, he's like, "I want you to do this and do that and do that." And I text my friend. I said, "Does this guy think I work for him? He doesn't. I don't work for nobody. The things that matter to you don't matter to me, bro. I don't care that you got a million little Asian kids to buy your ugly ass shoes. Those things are overpriced and ugly. I wouldn't wear them for free. So what makes you think I'm gonna bow to any of this? Like we're obviously playing different games with different rules. This makes no sense to me. So again, what you have in America, generally speaking, is you do have that elite class that is very quick to sort of expect that the masses will simply do what they're told. And the unfortunate reality is that they're almost always right. They're almost always correct. The studies show that most people, because they're not sure who they are, they're too scared to be different. They don't want to be seen as radical and dangerous and all that. They just go right along with whatever's cool, whatever's hip, whatever's popular. I can't, that's not healthy. That's not good. So let me keep reading here. So according to Dr. Claude Anderson, and by the way, if anybody asks what page we're on, if somebody in the chat could just tell them so that I don't have to say, I'm gonna say it like a couple of times, but then I see sometimes, then even if I say it 3 times, someone will say, what page are we on again? Just tell them if they ask. If y'all could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it, because that's gonna trigger my ADHD, and y'all know how I get. All right, so let's pop in page 159, the Black History Reader. So Dr. Anderson mentions Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois were very much against wide open borders. Let's see here. When the Black Civil Rights Movement commenced in the late 1950s, the new Black leadership dismissed or ignored the opinions of their predecessors. One can only speculate as to the reasons. Perhaps they did not have the foresight to fully understand the politics of displacement that was occurring, that they were being replaced. Or maybe they were unknowledgeable about this nation's immigration history, where Black people used to have a much larger percentage of the population. Or maybe they wanted to demonstrate altruism, or they simply preferred to ignore or forget history and go along to get along as much as they could. Whatever the reasons, the new Black leadership switched from the anti-immigration stance of their predecessors to being pro-immigration. While the reason for the change of position is not clear, it is clear that they made the switch without fully understanding that providing unearned rights and benefits to people who are from other countries chasing the American dream caused native Black Americans to be neglected, disadvantaged, and rendered invisible in all respects. The old anti-Black the old black anti-immigration fighters must be turning over in their graves. Black civil rights organizations and politicians began to presume alliances with newly arriving immigrants. They began to presume that anybody who comes into the country is automatically going to be unified with the black community. And I want to ask y'all a question. Give me a yes or no. How many of y'all think that the majority of people that come in from other countries are just, vehemently pro-black? How many of you believe that everybody who comes from, say, I don't know, south of the border is going to just line up and show up at the reparations rally and and just really make sure that y'all are good? Anybody believe that nonsense? Yeah, yeah. So maybe they're making us into Boo Boo the Fool. And I say Boo Boo the Fool because, almost like the little kid, the kid who rode the little bus to school, who thought that people were his friends when really they weren't. So you think that the bully is your friend when really he just beats you up and takes your lunch money every day, or you think that every time he makes a joke and him and his friends are laughing at you, you think that you're laughing together, so you start laughing too, and the kid starts laughing too. Like the slow. So maybe we're like the slow kids on the little bus. Maybe we're the ones who, and no offense if anybody in here rode the little bus, or if you got a relative. I'm not making fun of those people because I think that they're actually smarter than us in certain areas. But really, you think about that. There sometimes you don't know when the joke is on you. Sometimes you don't know when people are laughing with you versus when they're laughing at you. And I think that we, to some extent, fall for the rope a dope because many of us get our political habits from people who just told us what to do and what to say and what to believe. We didn't actually form those beliefs on our own. And that's very, very dangerous because propaganda is real, manipulation is real. This does happen. So let me keep going here. So here's what else Dr. Anderson says on page 160 of the Black History Reader. He says civil rights organizations and politicians began to presume that there were alliances with newly arriving people from other countries. I'm gonna try not to say the word immigrant too much, just because I don't want to trigger algorithms, because again, there's censorship out here. Those alliances, especially with the Latino community, did not and do not exist. The Latino community firmly denies that such alliances exist, and it takes little analysis to determine that any alliances Black leaders presume are one-sided. Again, like the little kid on the little bus. You think they're laughing with you, they're laughing at you. Black leaders even support policies that benefit immigrant groups at the expense of Black people. Many Black leaders, for instance, support increased immigration, but immigrant groups such as Hispanics, Asians, and Arabs do not commit to or give support to any Black issues. There is no reciprocity, and immigrant advocate groups not only do not represent the interests of Blacks, the very purpose of their advocacy is in outright opposition to Black interests. Why is it that after all these years, leading Blacks cannot recognize circumstances that are harmful to their own people? Why is it that the people permit those whom they have accepted as leaders to continue doing them harm? So he says here, so the next question is question 53. How do immigration policies specifically injure Native Black Americans? So this is a good conversation to have in terms of if someone asks you, like, well, why do you have this issue with wide open borders or whatever? Well, let's see what Dr. Anderson has to say. He says, throughout the history of North America, waves of I'm going to say people from other countries have entered the country to take advantage of the considerable economic opportunities extended to them and to enjoy the elevated status, respect, and privileges they automatically receive over Blacks in the labor force. Since the Black descendants of slaves are not immigrants, they are excluded from the privileged status, benefits, and rights extended to people from other countries and must compete with every person from another country for basic rights and life resources. Immigrants and Blacks compete for space, rights, economics, and privileges. Reaching America has been a dream come true for people from other countries, but it has been a nightmare for many Native Blacks and their forefathers. Space. Although a growing number of legal and illegal immigrants are located in the suburbs, most immigrants find residential and commercial space in urban areas. Once they establish a toehold in the urban centers, they then mark and close the space using their language, culture, or religion as barriers to encroachment. Within the confines of their closed communities, they concentrate their resources and build socioeconomic enclaves or niches. Immigrant niches can be found in most urban areas like Detroit, Miami, LA, Philadelphia, New York, DC, San Francisco, and Chicago. After closing their territories, they marked them for their own cultural image, such as Koreatown, Chinatown, Frenchtown, Japantown, Little Cuba, Greektown, and Mexicantown. As their numbers grow, they spread out and gentrified the black areas, such as Harlem in New York City, Overtown, Liberty City, and Coconut Grove in Miami, Inglewood, Compton, and Watts in the LA area, and Sweet Auburn in Atlanta. Has anybody seen any of this? Let me know if you've noticed any of this in your communities. Anybody seen any of that? All these formerly black dominated cities are now occupied predominantly by Hispanic immigrants. Interesting. Numerical displacement means diminished economic and political influence by blacks in mainstream society. Since 1900, this is interesting. Pay attention now. Listen up. Since 1900, the Hispanic population increased from 100,000 to 55 million in 2016. They have surpassed and made Black Americans a minority. Hispanics boast that they are now the nation's new majority minority and will gentrify urban residential areas along with whites and Asians, displacing blacks. And that's what a lot of people in Chicago are protesting right now. They're very, very upset about this. The economic impact. Okay, so the economic impact of immigrants on Native Black Americans is quantifiable. For every 10%, now listen to this now. For every 10% increase in the number of immigrants, Native Black income is reduced by 0.3%. Blacks had an earnings ratio of 56 cents to every dollar earned by whites in the 1950s. Because of the Black Civil Rights Movement in the 1970s, blacks' earnings ratio rose to 66% of every dollar earned by whites. So we went from 56 to 66. However, between 1970 and 1990, there was a 300% increase in the number of legal and illegal Asians and Hispanics that entered the country, and the ratio of blacks' earnings to white earnings dropped from 66% to 57%. Where it was nearly 40 years earlier. So in 40 years, no progress in that earnings gap. Give me a yes if you follow that, if you understand what I said there. So what he's basically saying is that you are making progress when you have policies like affirmative action that were specifically designed to close the racial wealth gap, specifically designed to address grievances that were grievances that were done to you, right? But then when everything started to dilute, when other people started to jump in and grab your benefits, your income ratio went down again. So this is what he's saying here. In short, the 9-point economic gains due to the Black Civil Rights Movement were wiped out by the 300% increase in immigration population that occurred between 1970 and 1990. Employment, whether the job and this is where we talk about black jobs. Whether the job categories are skilled or unskilled, this nation has a long history of displacing blacks to make employment opportunities for other people. According to a U.S. Department of Commerce survey conducted in 1865, over 100,000 of the nation's 120,000 skilled artisans were Black Americans newly freed from slavery. What? Damn. Did y'all hear that? Let me read it again. This is interesting. According to a U.S. Department of Commerce survey conducted in 1865, over 100,000 of the nation's 120,000 skilled artisans were Black Americans newly freed from slavery. This is when we had trade, y'all. This is when we had skill. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on. Let's do an economic consciousness exercise. Are our kids coming out with skill now? Coming out of high school? Are the majority of our children coming out of school knowing how to do anything? Knowing how to, I don't know, paint things, build things, carpenters, bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, welders. Are they getting any of these trades coming out of school? I mean, I'm gonna just tell you like this, in my opinion, we should be ashamed of ourselves. We really should be ashamed. We should be absolutely ashamed that that people 100 years ago had more skill than we have right now with our bougie asses, our high tech, internet having asses, all these opportunities we supposedly have, all this progress we claim to have made, but our children have less skill than the children had 100 years ago. That's downright shameful. I'm very sorry. That's downright shameful. So anyway, let me keep going here. All right. So let's see here. During the same time that 100,000 of the 120,000 skilled artisans were Black Americans right after slavery, during the same time, 55 to 65% of all Southern farmers were Black and former slaves. Instead of Lincoln's administration mainstreaming the 5 million former slaves, He and his administration chose to enact immigration reform that attracted 26 million Europeans into the country to replace black farmers and artisans. Initially, newly arriving immigrants replaced northern native blacks in the lowest paying and dirtiest jobs. Later waves of immigrants replaced native blacks in the South as well as the North in skilled trades, artisan crafts, and agricultural based occupations. For those who would argue that immigrants did not displace Black Americans in jobs and employment opportunities, why are so many of the jobs that Blacks used to hold in hotels, retail sales, restaurants, airports, trash collection, banks, and other local businesses and all levels of government now staffed by Hispanics, Arabs, and other ethnic groups? Many Blacks were displaced by immigrants in business and public offices because they could not speak Spanish or other languages. The actual hidden or structural unemployment rate for Black Americans is nearly 50%. According to a report from the Center for Immigration Studies, matters were made worse between 2006 and 2016 when approximately 50% of all new jobs went to Hispanics. Where's the economic justice for Black Americans? And the scary, interesting part about this is that he's talking about 2016. He's not even, he doesn't, when he wrote this, he didn't even know about the wide open borders we have right now. He didn't know that we were bringing in 2 million people a month or something crazy like that. Just wide open, literally people climbing through the fence. Like that's very interesting. And what that speaks to is that the future is coming and it does not look bright if your goal is to sort of live off this integrationist dream of sort of like getting the same jobs that your parents would have gotten. I don't think the future looks good for that. I think that specific skills, specific wealth building strategies, specific economic survival methods are absolutely essential for anybody that wants to survive this new economy. And I haven't even talked about AI. AI, if we have, I don't know, 50 million immigrants that come through a fence in the southern border, well, AI is like bringing in a billion new immigrants. Like AI is everywhere. AI is going to be all over the place. So you really have to adjust to this new economy. And if you just simply, live as a sheep and do what you're told and just follow whatever they're telling you to do, you're probably going to get displaced. We're already being replaced when it comes to voting and stuff like that. I'm convinced of that. I think that the whole idea that a lot of Black people aren't automatically voting blue no matter who is leading them to say, okay, well, we got to get new voters to replace Black people, especially Black men. You've got these troublesome Black men out here who are questioning Democratic Party politics. So we're just going to get rid of them. We're just going to deal with something that's easier to deal with. And so that's happening on the political front. I think on the economic front, it's incredibly important to have a strategy. So the solution is wealth building. The solution is twofold. One, in the Black Business School, for example, we believe every Black child should learn how to start a business before the age of 12. Someone should be buying stock from them from the time that they're born. And also, every child should know the difference between ownership and renting. Also, in addition to that, skilled trades are incredibly important. College degrees are nice, but having either a skill trade or a capital base is typically better. And what I mean by a capital base is just a set of resources that allows you to generate the income that you need in order to pay your bills or to survive financially. I don't think it's very, very safe to send your children into an economy that has proven itself to be racist and has proven itself to marginalize Black people for the last 150 years and just sort of say good luck. I wish you the best. I don't think that they're going to be safe in that situation. So that's a solution. The solutions are out there. I personally think we need infrastructure building. We need investment. Job seeking, chasing down those few little Black jobs that they decide they want to give you is not going to get you to where you want to be, typically. Okay, so let's keep going here. It certainly is not a solution for 40 million people. All right, so let's read here. We're on page 163 of the Black History Reader, which you can find at powernomics.com. It says the U.S. Supreme Court's Brown versus Board of Education decision was supposed to have corrected damages inflicted on Black students for more than 400 years of zero schools and poor schools. But before any major educational improvements could be made, the immigration reforms of 1965 brought in a massive influx of immigrant minority children, quote unquote minority children, who began to compete with native Black children for resources. There are no constitutional mandates to giving newly arriving immigrant children legal or illegal, accompanied or unaccompanied educational advantages over Blacks. Prevailing policies and laws, however, give immigrants preferential treatment over blacks. Another area is affirmative action. Affirmative action programs were originally designed to correct injustices to one race of people, blacks, by another race of people, whites, and to eliminate the legacies of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. Today, affirmative action programs have been converted into preference programs for immigrants, though most categories of immigrants are white and have never been negatively impacted by the racism and racial conditions that caused these programs to be necessary. This error can be traced to the Immigration and Reform Control Act of 1986, which effectively required employers to treat immigrants exactly like native born citizens. Since nearly 90% of all immigrants are classified as white on their immigration records and driver's licenses, why aren't immigrants treated like whites and excluded from affirmative action programs? Why are they categorized with blacks only in the instance of affirmative action? So they don't live the whole black experience, but when it comes time to benefit from being black, everybody wants to be black. But when it's time to really be black and to deal with the struggles of being black, everybody walks out of the room. So he says here, putting apples and oranges in the same categories set up a situation where immigrants of any race displace blacks from the very programs designed to help them. It is not possible to justify including Hispanics, Arabs, Asians, and other immigrants and women who are a majority in affirmative action programs. Yet in 2016, black civil rights leaders, elected officials at the highest levels, and other members of the black overclass publicly supported immigration reform and granting citizenship to 12 to 20 million illegal immigrants that had entered the country since 1990. The black overclass agreed with those who wanted to reach out and invite even millions more immigrants. Our federal and state governments may have reasons to support increased immigration, but they have a moral obligation to avoid and correct the devastating harm it causes native black Americans. I'm done. There's nothing else to talk about. Um, I'm irritated. I'm very irritated because you're really in a fight. Basically, you're really in this fight that you're losing. Collectively, you're losing. But there are solutions, and I think the solutions. I don't see the solutions ever being implemented on a national level. And part of it is because if you go back to the beginning of our conversation where we talked about the BETs of the world, BET, this big white owned company that pretends to be black, that uses black people and sells them and makes billions of dollars doing that. These platforms are not positioned. This overclass is not positioned to do the things that are absolutely essential to really create the sort of um, economic or cultural or educational foundation required for you to truly succeed in this competitive economy. In this society, the more mainstream you are, the more mainstream your ideas are, the more you're relegated to the underclass. Because in the mainstream, there is a presumption that blackness means you're at the bottom. They will always have more sympathy for, I don't know, say a George Floyd situation where a guy gets killed by a cop and everyone feels sorry for a black man. They'll highlight that, but they won't talk about all of the other black men that are just trying to survive economically with their families, or the abuse that happens when men get incarcerated, or what's happening, how our families get broken when you have things like the Biden crime bill where so many men are in prison right now, and all these other variables that are affecting families. I get it. The police shootings are something worth addressing 100%, but that's not really something that is absolutely foundational to the existence and survival of the average black family in America. If you want to look at solutions, here's the deal. I think you have to get rid of the old school black leadership model where you have these civil rights superstars who are, going to be at the Grammys and the Oscars and taking pictures next to the presidential candidates claiming to represent the black community. In almost every single case, none of that ever really works. None of it. I still remember even when President Obama got elected and everybody was so excited about who he was supposed to become for the black community. I was speaking at a church in New York, and on the day he got inaugurated, they changed the words of the song "We Shall Overcome," and they started singing "We Have Overcome." That's what they started singing. And I remember sitting there. I couldn't even sing it. I just kind of moved my lips because I said, I cannot believe we're singing "We Have Overcome." What have you really overcome? Barack overcame a lot for sure. He's president. He should be proud of that. I'm very happy for him. But you ain't overcame nothing. Like what are you getting excited about? And then the same day, I remember a lady came out and she had this real nice picture of Barack Obama. It was like a painting. And I said, "That's a nice painting." And she said, "Absolutely. I just bought it." And she was real excited. She said, "I'm gonna put it up in my living room next to my pictures of Martin Luther King and Jesus." That's what she literally said. She was gonna put it up next to Martin Luther King and Jesus. And that was like her inspiration for the day. And I get that. I'm not anti-Barack on any level, but I think that you have to kind of know the difference between substance and symbolism. Also, I think you have to know the difference between um, a pseudo solution and an actual solution. I don't think the solutions for the Black community typically are going to be mainstream, led by mainstream leaders on national media outlets, because there's too much money being made from your oppression. There are too many people that benefit from controlling you. If you have a pimp and he's making money from his pack of hoes, because that's what we become. We become everybody's hoe except for, we don't benefit ourselves. We become a pack of hoes. That pimp has no incentive to liberate any of the women or any of the hoes, because he maybe got some male hoes too. He has no incentive to do what's best for those individuals, none. So to some extent, Black people, we've always been this commodity for other people. We are the perfect consumer because we will buy anything. We are wonderful for the educational system because they make money when your kids are going to these schools and not being properly educated. There are, we also give away so many things for free. We have the best athletes in the world, the best performers, the most interesting culture. People can package it up like BET and they can sell it and make money from that. And so there are so many people that are positioned properly to extract things from you. So when you're looking, when the pimp, when the prostitute is looking to the pimp to say, how do I become a better person? How do I do more for me? How do I make my life better? All he's going to do is tell her a bunch of lies. So you have this overclass, these pimps that pretty much are, if you let them lie to you, they're going to keep lying to you. If you let them keep telling you like, oh yeah, the best way for Black people to move forward is to everybody make sure you vote for the Democrats, and make sure you come to work every day. Make sure you go to school every day. Make sure you go to college and go $200,000 in debt to get a college degree, and that's how you become successful. They're walking you right down the rabbit trap. What they're literally saying is we're okay. See, the thing is, people think that there are others who just flat out hate Black people. First of all, I don't care if other people like me or not. I assume that they don't care that much about me. If I have a neighbor across the street who has a big Trump flag in his front yard, and I don't hate the guy. I don't like him or dislike him. I don't know if he likes me or not. He has a big pickup truck. He's like a former cop. He could be a black people hating redneck or something. But I don't care. Um, he doesn't care about me. I don't care about him. I don't need him. I don't need him to like me. I just need him to like not bother me, right? So I don't know if there are all these people in the world that just sit around and think how I can, how do I hate Black people today? I don't know if there are people out there like that. Maybe there are a few, but I don't think that there are lots of people like that per se. But I do know that if you're talking about people that are going to love you, that has to start with you. And if you talk about people that are going to represent your interests, you have to start with you. And so similar to that prostitute who, everywhere she turns, the pimp is always there explaining the world to her. She's going to have to get her validation from somewhere other than the pimp. She's going to have to get her advice from somewhere other than the individual who has a direct incentive to exploit her. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this whole system's designed to benefit from you, to extract things from you. That's just how it's built. So in order for you to find your solution, you're gonna kind of have to wiggle out of that. You're gonna have to spend some time alone and really look at your life, look at your family, look at your situation, look at your goals, and come up internally with the solutions that are gonna liberate you and get you to where you want to go. And you have to know that some of those solutions are gonna cause you to lose favor with your master. If I go, for example, when I go and when I started saying to Black people, look, I don't think you have to vote for Democrats or Republicans. I think you should do what's best for you. A lot of people got real mad at me. And I was like, why are you mad at me? They're like, because you're telling black people not to vote. I said, I never told black people not to vote. I never, oh, you're telling black people to become Trump supporters. I never told black people to become Trump supporters. I told them to do what's best for themselves. Why is that such a threat to you? Why is that so bad for you? Well, oh, I get it because you have a direct interest and you benefit directly from the control and the management of black people. So you don't really have leaders. Leaders are people that lead you to a better life. Leaders are people who improve your situation. You don't have leaders, you have managers. Managers are people whose job it is to keep you in a nice little collective bucket so they can sell you, serve you up to the next person that wants to exploit you. They can pass you around. Like Diddy did with some of his victims. Shout out to poor Justin Bieber. I wonder if that's what happened to him. I'm not gonna say one way or the other, but that poor guy, he's been through something, right? So really, the thing is, I think we have to know the difference between people that want to serve the black community versus those who want to sell the black community. That's what you have. So in every election, you have these political bosses who go into, the office typically of the Democrats and sometimes the Republicans too, and they say, I can deliver black votes. How much you gonna pay me to deliver black people? And then their job is to deliver. And if they don't deliver, then their bosses say, I'm not going to compensate you because you didn't deliver black people the way you're supposed to. Just like a farmer delivering chickens to KFC. You are a commodity. You are a commodity. And I could keep going to other analogies, but I'm not going to keep on dragging this on and on. But I want you to really understand that. So, in order for, if you have a prostitute who wants to do what's best for himself or herself, she cannot go to the pimp to get guidance or advice on any level. If you are a chicken and on a farm and all your friends are being fattened up so they can be sold to KFC, you can't go to the farmer and say, what should I do next with my life? What does it mean for me to be a good person? You can't do that. You have to figure that out internally and know that at some point, your interests and the farmer's interests are going to just be different. So your interest, so when you start to become economically independent, an economically independent black community or an economically independent black family is at the very least a family where that family benefits as much or more from its own labor, skills, and resources and intellectual capital than anybody else, right? So, economically independent, let's draw a picture of that. What does that look like? Well, if I've got a family and there are five of us in the family and we all work 40 hours a week, and traditionally we all go out and we find some white guy to work for. You go work for Ford, you go work for GM, you go work for Walgreens or whatever. We're all giving our 40 hours a week to this broader system that's owned and controlled by other people. So we're pouring into the wealth of other people. And then after we get all our money, we go shopping to pour into the wealth of the people who own the mall. And then after that, we also pay the landlord. So we're pouring into the landlord's wealth. So you're draining yourself by making sure that everyone else is good, making sure that everyone else is well taken care of, because they've trained you to believe that that's what you do in order to be a good citizen. Well, an economically independent family, in my opinion, if you want a direct solution, is a family that says, how do we sort of shift the system a little bit where those benefits, at least a portion of those benefits, are coming to us too? How do I create a win-win with this economy instead of the win-lose that we were raised on? See, you were raised on a win-lose in this economy. And the win-lose means this. It means that you have millions of people in the black community who work hard every day, went to school, who have been very responsible, law abiding citizens who have not broken any laws, raised their families properly, worked their butts off for 40 or 50 years, and are dying with a negative net worth. And somehow you feel screwed and you don't know why. You're trying to figure out, you're like, something isn't right. And I just don't know. Like, how is it that I did everything the way I was supposed to do it, but everybody was winning except for me? Well, that's because you got to really go back and question the assumptions of the game that you're playing. You have to sort of figure out, like, what does that look like for me to pour 40 hours of labor into something that's going to benefit me and the people that I care about, as opposed to pouring 40 hours into something that's not going to give me any benefits? What does it look like for me to spend money on a product that's where the part of that money is going to accrue to either myself or people that are in my space, versus me spending money in a place where those financial benefits aren't coming back at all? Do you understand? You have to think about these things. Critical thinking is essential for anybody that wants to deal with all this. You are going into, in my view, the most complicated economy and society that we've ever had. We've never had an economy, for sure, in American history that's more complicated than the one you're entering into now. You've got illegal immigration over here. You've got corrupt politicians and the failing government over there. You've got artificial intelligence back there. You're going to have to think. You're really going to have to think. And to me, What does that mean? Well, that heightens the importance of little things like the family meeting. Maybe we sit down together as a family and say, how are we going to help each other out? How are we going to make sure everybody in here is good? I've got an extra X number of hours per week that I'm going to put toward one of my goals. How do I do it in a way where I'm winning and you're winning? What partnerships can we come up with that allow us to bring our energy together as opposed to dividing and diluting our energy by all of us just going out here chasing the black job? Right? Do you understand? That's what we all do that. A lot of us traditionally we just do that. It's like you got three siblings, all of you are hardworking, smart people, but all of y'all are running off trying to go get some degree and go work for some white man somewhere when you could be working with each other. What is it about white folks in creating businesses and institutions that makes us believe that they're the only ones who can do it? Asian people do it, Arab people do it, Jewish people do it, white people do it. We can do it too. And we are doing it, by the way. So shout out to those of you who are trying. And I just want you to understand that you're gonna fail. It's not gonna be perfect. It's not gonna always make sense. It's gonna be hard, but it's better than the other version of hard, which is where you work your butt off for 50 years and then you die broke, or you die with a net worth that is much lower than what it should be, or you find out that the people that you've been pouring into your whole life are all getting rich. Every time you're making that car note payment, the car dealer's getting rich. You pay your rent, the landlord's getting rich. You go to work, your boss is getting rich. What about you? Where are you getting rich in this process? And if you can't see where you're getting rich, where you're at least getting a piece of the benefits of all the things that God has blessed you with, then that means you're playing the wrong game, partner. You in the wrong system. You got to fix it, buddy. You got to look around, elevate your consciousness. Consciousness is critical. So again, I want to reiterate, I am not here telling you what to do. When I talk like this, I know that there are people who get mad at me and they think that I'm out here just misleading people and all. I'm not telling you nothing about what you need to do next. What I want to be able to help you do is I want to help heighten your consciousness to the point where when you decide what you're going to do next, it's the right move for you and those kids that you got. It's the right move for your family. I think every parent, some of y'all in here are parents like me. I'm a parent, and my number one goal as a parent is to make sure my kids, I'm not raising no goddamn slaves. I'm not. I'm not raising, I'm not raising anybody's servant. I'm just not doing that. I want them, maybe they can serve humanity or something, do good things in the world. I want that, but I'm not raising, I don't want children that were raised under me to go out into the world and be miserable, broke, struggling, selling stuff that they shouldn't be selling just to go pay the rent. I don't want them in that situation. So I think, just something as basic as like loving yourself and loving your kids means that maybe it's worth sort of reconsidering the things that you were told, because a lot of things that they tell you are just wrong. And here's the thing about, and this is the last point I'm gonna make on this about capitalism, the dark side of capitalism, is that they're not just doing this to black people. They're not just doing this to you. They're doing this to everybody. The capitalist system, it harms it harms pretty much everybody, right? Anybody that's in the working class is pretty much getting screwed in America right now. I want to make that clear. So you're not the only ones, but it tends to happen worse to black people because we are so vulnerable. Do you understand? So effectively, when you're in that situation, I think it's important to at least start the conversation by realizing we don't have any friends, we don't have any true allies, because if you were really an ally, you'd be fighting for us to get that 14 trillion in reparations. But from what I understand about money and power, people don't give those things away easily. So I hope that this discussion was beneficial to you. That's what I'm seeing. I thank God for Dr. Claude Anderson for explaining the truth behind the historical immigration policies and what that does to us. I'm not telling you that you have to agree with him. Maybe he's wrong about things. I'm not going to say that he's right about everything, but this is another perspective for you to consider. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys go. Tomorrow morning, we're going to meet for a financial consciousness training. If you want to join us, we meet every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. It's 100% free to join the live session. So if you want to get an invite, you can text the word morning, MORNING, to 87948. Text morning to 87948. And also, if you live in another country and you can't text the word morning, just go to drboyceelevate.com. That's drboyceelevate.com. I'll send you an invitation, and we're going to meet tomorrow morning because I want your economic consciousness on 10. that when you have that heightened awareness, you just understand things better and you can get more out of life that you want without sort of hoping that somebody eventually gives you things that people just don't give away. Nobody gives away money and power. You got to learn how to take it. All right. So let's see. Where can you hear the recording? Well, this particular recording, I am streaming on my YouTube channel, which is drboycetv.com. If you want all of the trainings that we've done in this class, we've probably done 200 or 300 by now. You can actually go to drboycebookclub.com, or I think Amani's in the chat. Maybe Amani, if you have the link, you can share the link where if you want to just go get them all and you can share them with your family. There we go. Amani put the link in the chat. So feel free to take a look at that, and all of that's in there. And in addition to that, if you want to get a copy of my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, you can go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com and use the code word book club, all one word. You get 30% off. All right, guys. Well, have a good night. God bless you. It was great to see you. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the morning for consciousness training. And I wish you the best. So let's educate ourselves. Let's be great. Let's make Black people great again. I'm kidding. We've always been great. We never stop being great. It's other people who got to be great again. I don't know about y'all, but I think most of y'all in here have been kicking ass for many, many years. So everybody ain't losing. So keep on winning. God bless you guys.